All right, let's dive in. Today, we're all about focus.
Unwavering focus.
That's right, unwavering focus. We're taking a deep dive into an excerpt from Dandapan's talk, which I know is right up your alley. And, full disclosure,
Oh, yeah.
I am easily distracted. Like, seriously. I'm the queen of shiny objects.
I hear you.
But that's why we have you here. You can cut through the noise and find those nuggets of wisdom.
Happy to help.
So are you ready to unlock the secrets of unwavering focus?
Absolutely. Let's do this. It's interesting because Dandapan actually starts his talk by talking about his childhood.
Okay.
And he was constantly teased, for not being able to focus.
Wait a minute, so even the master of focus wasn't always focused. That's kind of mind-blowing.
It really is. And it makes you think twice about the idea that, you're either born focused or you're not.
Yeah, like it's just in your genes.
Exactly. In fact, Dandapan even suggests that, if you were a kid today, he might have been labeled with ADD or ADHD.
Oh.
But here's the thing. He learned to focus. He actually trained his mind to focus, just like you train for a marathon.
Okay, that's encouraging, I have to say. But it does raise a question for me. If focus is a skill, why is it so hard for so many of us?
It's a great question, and Dandapan has a pretty straightforward answer. We've become masters of distraction.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, because, we practice distraction all the time. He even gives this statistic that we spend something like 13 hours a day practicing distraction.
13 hours, that's like half the day. No wonder we're all so good at being distracted. It's like we're training for the distraction Olympics.
Exactly. Think about it, constantly checking your phone, endlessly scrolling, trying to do a million things at once.
Oh yeah, multitasking, the ultimate distraction.
Right. We're not really focused on anything.
So speaking of distractions, what about the elephant in the room, or rather the smartphone in our pocket?
Technology.
Is technology the real villain in this focus saga?
Dandapan doesn't actually demonize technology. No, he doesn't think it's inherently bad.
Okay.
It's about how we use it.
Makes sense.
He points out that even monks in his monastery use technology.
I wouldn't have pictured that.
But the difference is they use it intentionally.
So it's not about tossing our smartphones in the river, it's about setting boundaries.
Exactly. Making tech work for us, not against us.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we do that? I mean, it's easy to say, be more mindful, but how do you actually put that into practice?
Well, Dandapan uses this really cool analogy to explain how our minds work. He compares the mind to a mansion, like a big house with many rooms.
Oh, okay.
And he says that our awareness is like a glowing ball of light moving through these rooms.
Interesting.
In each room, that's a different state of mind. So you might have a room for anxiety, a room for creativity.
Oh, and a room for focus.
Right, the focus room. And we can choose which room we want to be in.
So instead of feeling overwhelmed by anxiety, it's like we're just in the anxiety room.
Yeah.
And we can choose to walk into a different room.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we have a choice.
Okay. I like that. That's empowering.
Absolutely. But now the question is, how do we get better at choosing? How do we strengthen that ability?
Yes.
Yeah.
What kind of mental workout do we need to do to level up our focus game?
Dandapan has some simple exercises. One of them is just focusing on an object.
Anything in particular?
It could be a flower, a candle flame, anything that catches your eye. You just observe it, and when your mind wanders, you gently bring it back.
So it's like mental reps.
Exactly. And the best part is, you can do this anywhere.
Waiting for the bus, focus practice time.
Exactly.
Stuck in a boring meeting, focus practice time.
Just like with physical exercise, consistency is key.
Okay, this is starting to feel doable, not so overwhelming. But hold on a second, what about our kids? How do we help them develop this superpower of focus in a world that's like a distraction factory?
Dandapan's really passionate about this. He believes that we need to shift away from medicating children who have trouble focusing and instead actually teach them how to concentrate.
Okay.
He says that we, as adults, have a responsibility to show them what good focus looks like.
That makes sense. Kids learn by watching us.
Exactly.
If we're constantly distracted, glued to our devices, they'll think that's normal.
Right. But if we can show them that we value focus,
engage with things fully, be present,
they'll be more likely to develop those skills themselves.
It's about creating a culture of focus, not just expecting them to figure it out on their own.
So here's a question for you. What's one small change you can make to be a better focus role model?
That's a great question, and one I think we all need to ponder. But let's dig into that a bit more after a quick break. We'll be back soon to explore more of Dandapan's insights and figure out how to build that unwavering focus for ourselves and the kids in our lives. Welcome back to our deep dive into unwavering focus. I'm curious, what stood out to you so far?
It's that 13 hours of distraction. It's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, it really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? It's not just about willpower, it's about being aware of all those little things that pull us away.
Exactly. It's like we're constantly fighting against this current of distractions. But if we're not just victims of this, hyper-distracting world, how do we break free? Dandapan seems to think it starts with understanding our minds.
Wait, he talks about that mansion with many rooms analogy.
Yeah, remember, it's not about forcing ourselves to stay in the focus room all the time. It's about figuring out why we get drawn to other rooms.
Like maybe the anxiety room feels comfortable, or the procrastination room offers a temporary escape.
Right, it's not about brute force. It's about being mindful and choosing where we want to be.
Okay, I'm starting to feel a little more hopeful, but awareness alone doesn't make us focus masters. What are some of Dandapan's practical tips for actually getting better at this?
Well, he talks about incorporating small focus exercises into our daily routine. Remember that focusing on a simple object?
Yeah, the flower, the candle flame.
It sounds basic, but it really trains our minds to resist distractions.
Like mental bicep curls, and you can do it anywhere.
Exactly. And the key is consistency.
Make it a habit.
Just like physical exercise. And speaking of routines, he also talks a lot about setting an example for kids.
Right, modeling those good focus habits.
He believes it's one of the most powerful ways to help them develop this skill.
Makes sense. It's like that saying, children learn what they live.
Exactly.
If they see us constantly multitasking or checking our phones during conversations, that becomes their normal.
But if we can show them that we value focus and being present,
they'll be more likely to learn those qualities themselves.
So here's another question for you. What's one specific way you can model better focus for the kids in your life?
That's a good one. Putting the phone away during meals, maybe? Or having dedicated device-free time?
Exactly. Those small changes can make a big difference. It's about showing, not just telling.
Right, leading by example.
But let's not forget about ourselves. What about when we get distracted, despite our best intentions?
Yeah, it happens to the best of us.
Dandapan actually uses a really cute analogy to explain this. He compares our awareness to a puppy dog.
Oh, I love puppies. Tell me more.
So imagine you're trying to train this puppy.
Okay.
You give it a command, but then it gets distracted by a butterfly or squeaky toy.
Puppies will be puppies.
Do you get angry and scold the puppy?
Well, maybe not angry, but probably a little frustrated.
Right, we all would. But Dandapan says that instead of getting frustrated with ourselves when we get distracted, we should treat ourselves with the same kindness we give that curious puppy.
So acknowledge the distraction without judgment and gently redirect our attention.
Exactly. Like calling the puppy back to you and refocusing its attention.
That's a much better approach than beating myself up for getting sidetracked.
Exactly. It's about gentleness and understanding, both for ourselves and for that playful puppy mind.
Okay, I'm really liking this analogy. So instead of yelling at myself for getting distracted, I can just say, hey, mind, I see you're interested in that shiny thought, but we're focusing on this right now.
And just like that puppy learns to stay focused, our minds get better at resisting distractions over time.
This is making so much sense. But I have to ask, are all distractions created equal?
That's a great question. Dandapan actually distinguishes between two types of distractions, internal and external.
Internal distractions, that's like those pesky thoughts and feelings that pull us away from the present.
Exactly. That mental chatter that can hijack our focus.
And external distractions are the more obvious things, like noises and notifications.
Right. And while we can't always control our surroundings, understanding these different types of distractions can help us manage them better.
This is fascinating. I feel like I'm getting a whole new understanding of how focus works, but those internal distractions, they can be tough to handle.
Dandapan has a technique for that too. It's called labeling our thoughts.
Labeling our thoughts?
Yeah, it's a mindfulness practice. You simply observe the thought that's distracting you and give it a label.
So instead of getting lost in a worry about an upcoming deadline, I might just say to myself, oh, there's that future tripping thought again.
Exactly. And then gently redirect your attention back to the present moment.
It's like we're taking away its power by simply acknowledging it.
Right, instead of being caught in the current, we're watching the thoughts float by.
This is giving me so much to think about. But before we wrap up, what's the most important takeaway for our listeners?
I think the biggest thing is that focus isn't some magical talent. It's a skill we can all develop.
With practice and awareness.
Exactly. We can all learn to harness the power of our minds and live more intentional lives.
I'm definitely feeling inspired. Maybe I can finally conquer those shiny bottle caps after all.
I think you can.
Now on to the final part of our deep dive, where we'll continue exploring Dandapan's insights and really get practical with building that unwavering focus. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of great stuff, but before we wrap up, I want to circle back to those practical tips for dealing with distractions, especially those sneaky internal ones that can really throw us off track.
It's a good point. Those internal distractions can be the toughest to manage. But Dandapan has this technique called labeling our thoughts.
You mentioned this earlier. I'm really curious about it. How does that work?
So let's say you're trying to focus, but you keep replaying a frustrating conversation in your head. Instead of getting all caught up in those emotions again, you simply observe the thought and give it a label, like frustration or past dwelling.
So we step back and kind of become an observer.
Exactly. It's like you're saying, hey, frustration, thanks for dropping by, but I'm busy right now.
It's like we tame those thoughts by naming them, acknowledging them without letting them take over.
That's a great way to put it. Just by labeling the thought, we create some distance, and that can help us stay focused.
This is incredibly insightful. I feel like I'm getting a whole new toolkit for focusing. But before we say goodbye, I want to go back to that question you asked earlier. What's one small thing our listeners can do to be better focus role models for their kids?
It's a great question because, as we've discussed, modeling good focus habits is one of the most important things we can do. It doesn't have to be complicated. Maybe it's setting aside some device-free time each day where everyone puts away their phones and engages in a focused activity together.
I love that idea. Playing a board game, reading a book together, just having a conversation without distractions, those moments can be really special.
And remember, it's not about being perfect. We all get distracted sometimes. What's important is that we model a healthy approach. Acknowledge it, redirect our attention, and show kids that focus is a skill they can learn.
This has been such an inspiring deep dive. I'm feeling motivated to really step up my focus game.
Me too. And for everyone listening, remember, focus is a journey, not a destination. There will be good days and not so good days. But every time you redirect your attention, you're getting stronger. You're creating a more intentional life for yourself and the kids who look up to you.
Beautifully said. So to our listener, thank you for joining us on this journey into unwavering focus. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and practical tools. Remember, small, consistent efforts can make a world of difference. Stay curious, be present, and keep practicing that focus superpower.